Wonderful. So I think we should go ahead and get started. Welcome. I'm Mary Fries. I use she or they pronouns. I'm from Education Development Center in Waltham, Massachusetts, or where I live currently, which is in Medford. Haven't been to Waltham in a while. We're just outside of the Boston area. I'm a BJC AP Computer Science Principles Curriculum Developer, and I've also just started the BJC Middle School Curriculum Development effort. And this session is meeting the needs of new SNAP users. BJC teachers
And
weigh.
then once you have that set up, give your project a name. And
Is someone asking a question?
Nope, I muted them, Mary, don't worry.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Great. So our agenda, we'll start with a little bit of goal setting, talking about what we're doing here together. We'll have a panel from some of our experienced AP CSP teachers, and then we're going to open it up to have a discussion with participants to talk about how we can best meet the needs of new SNAP users. And if we have some time at the end, we'll talk about kind of prioritizing some of the needs that are coming out of those discussions. So on to goals. The goal here is really to better understand the new user experience for new SNAP programmers. So as I mentioned, I've been programming in SNAP and working on the BJC curriculum for 6 years, maybe 7 years now. A lot of the folks at this conference, we're all experienced SNAP programmers. Or most of us, many of us are very experienced SNAP programmers. So it's sometimes hard to relive what that experience is of the new user. So we're looking to teachers who see new users every year, and also any new users who have joined this group, this panel, to hear from you. What is it that new users are running up against? What are these typical challenges? And what kinds of could we make in SNAP to help ease the transition to working in SNAP so that we're able to get right into the programming without any kind of hurdles or with minimal number of hurdles that we're working through. And then if we have time, as I mentioned, we'll try to collectively prioritize those requests. We might hear a bunch of different ideas. What are the most critical things that we'd love to see improved? So without further ado, we'll hear from our BJC CSP experienced teachers. I gave us some guiding questions. Who are you? Name, pronoun, school location, your BJC teaching context, grade level, how many years, about how many students, whatever you'd like to share. We'd love to hear what you love most about teaching introductory programming with the SNAP language, maybe some highlights of what's worked really well. And then some idea of the typical challenges that you see new students facing in those first few weeks of programming with SNAP, and any aspects of SNAP that you feel like get in the way of students learning to program. Again, SNAP, the goal here is to almost get out of the way of programming so students can really focus on the challenges of learning to program and not be struggling with the language of the interface. And so we just want to know, is there anything else that we could do to improve that? And so without further ado, do we have any panelists who would like to speak first? Audrey, great. Let's hear from Audrey.
I always like getting it out of the way. Then I can relax and listen to what everyone else has to say.
Great.
So my name is Audrey Coates. I live in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I teach in Linfield, and I'm a full-time computer science teacher. I've been teaching BJC for, I guess, 5 years now, and I love it. I really am in love with the curriculum. I love how much programming we do and how complex the program can get. I have students every year who amaze me in what they get out of it and how they go leaps and bounds above what I have taught them or what the curriculum has led them to. They're always finding something new. So yeah, I just love that. I think that's great. The typical challenges, I'd say at the beginning, and the beginning kind of lasts a long time, like maybe even the first quarter. It's easy for students that are struggling with programming to hide. With the real big emphasis on the pair programming, they can be really good at not acting like they're struggling when they're really, really struggling. And sometimes it takes to the end of the quarter when I've given them a quiz or two. I don't overly assess. I do more, completion grades. But when I do, they tank it. And that's when they start realizing and I start realizing they're in trouble. And it's really hard to move on to units 2, 3, and so on when that beginning foundation is weak. So one thing that when the new curriculum came out, was it a year ago, 2 years ago now? that I like that they did is they put a lot of optional programming in, optional programs at the end of Unit 1 and Unit 2. And last year, and I get confused now with all the hullabaloo from the pandemic of what I did what years, but last year obviously was difficult. But I did like pulled out one optional program or two. And I think that this year I will do a lot more of the optional programs. One thing I tried to do, and I will do more, is group, for those optional programs, group likability rather than, you know, the good with the weak. I think I'll put the weak with the weak so that they have to together, ask for help or, you know, get it from each other and not be reliant on someone who can just buzz through it in a second and they can copy and paste. So, you know, I don't even know if I'm asking BJC to do anything different. I think maybe I'm saying this would be how I would use it differently because I think the resources are there. Another thing that I've noted, it's been mentioned, is that showing code and having kids work their way through it. I definitely want to do more of that, whether it's working through someone else's code in the classroom or me giving them broken code and them having to fix it, or even just predicting what the code would be. I think I have a real struggle with that. Oh, one other thing that I thought of that I find weak is the idea of the planning programming ahead, you know, whether it's pseudocoding or just talking it through, because we so often are doing the programs following step by step, the great way that has been laid out in the curriculum. We don't do that. We don't pre-plan. We just do what we're being told to do. And I say we, like I'm a student. So I think that optional programming is going to help with that, where I'm going to force them more to have that planning phase and to pseudocode it or talk it through. Because I think that is a real weakness. And then when they start doing more complex things, they get stuck because they don't plan. And I hate planning too. So it's hard for me to force them. I like jumping right in. So then, so that's what I see for challenges. What aspects get in the way of learning to program? I'd say maybe I don't see a lot. I think the Snap is a fantastic way to learn to program. I think the idea of that it takes out the syntax issues and we can jump in and do really cool stuff really quickly is just amazing. So maybe the one thing I would say is the students' attitude about Snap when they see a block-based programming is not real programming. And it's funny is I teach a Python class, which is a CP level class, and this is a AP level. And the kids, they'll have arguments between the two classes. Oh, you know, the Python kids are like, we do real coding. And I'm like, they're like, no. You guys are stuck in the syntax for so long. They're doing really amazing stuff. You don't get that they get the things you cannot get to in a year. And they have that feeling that it's play school, that it's, you know, the blocks. And Brian gave a write-up about like why it's not a baby language, which I think is fantastic. And I'm absolutely going to use that at the beginning of the year to kind of show, you know, give kids the reasons why it's not a baby language. Why is it that we choose to do this on purpose? I guess that's it for me.
Thanks so much, Audrey. I actually want to ask you a little bit about this discussion that happened between students in a text-based programming class and in a Snap class. I'm wondering if you noticed anything about how that conversation progressed over the year. Was there any kind of resolution where students in the Snap-based class realized that they were able to do more things? Do you have any insights there? And also just bookmark that question to everybody if you've been seeing these issues come up with students. When we open it up to everyone, I'd love to hear other insights about working with that question, because that question does come up. And we, you know, all of us as Snap programmers, we know there's so much more you can do when you don't have that syntactical overhead. How do we get that message across to kids? What do you think, Audrey?
Well, I'd say most of the conversation goes on behind my back. You know, it's siblings that take my two different classes. And it's when the AP kids will walk in the room and they'll see the Python on my screen and be just amazed. But I think what I've done is I'll point out to them, do you see what they're doing here? We just learned if then. We haven't even learned how to loop. And they're like, oh man, how do you do this without looping? You know, and they, when I point out the specifics, they calm down pretty quick about it. I think they realize it quickly. And I do show off the projects from my Snap kids to my Python kids, and they're always super impressed with what they can accomplish.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Audrey. Do we have another panelist who's ready to talk through your experiences with BJC, but also with SNAP and working with introductory students, and what you love and what challenges you run across?
I'll go.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'll jump in. Oh, hi, Kim. Good, you're
Hi.
here.
No,
Oh,
go ahead.
good. No, please go ahead. I was kind of hoping. Okay, good. Go.
Okay, so I'm Kim Overman, and I teach in Shingle Springs, California. It's in Northern California, and I've been doing BJC in the high school. This will be my 5th year, and I've been training other teachers to use BJC for APCSP for several years now. I'm predominantly a math teacher, but I absolutely love teaching APCSP with the BJC curriculum. It's fabulous. I would agree with everything that Audrey said as far as it takes out the syntax issues. I know when I personally learned how to program, it was constantly looking at dot matrix print pages of which one is the colon, which one is the semicolon, where did I put in too many spaces, and the kids don't have to deal with any of that, and they get to start in doing things right away. And I think the accessibility is just amazing. I like that the blocks can be in different languages. So my students that English is not their primary language, that's a very helpful thing for them. Let's see, what else do I think is just amazing about SNAP? I actually really like the way the curriculum is set up. And I think that it does a really good job preparing the kids for the College Board's exam. But more than that, it gives them so many opportunities to learn that failure is not bad, and that you get all these little great happy accidents. And I love walking around my classroom and listening to the kids go, oh, Miss Oak, come over here. We got to show you what we just did. It's super cool. And the amount of excitement that the kids get out of that is just, I don't know. I mean, I like to tell kids it's not just for, this class is not necessarily for the programming nerd in quotation marks. It's for anybody. I promote this class with the AVID program at my school because they try to get the AVID kids to take at least one AP class. And I'm like, this is a great class because it goes for all kinds of things, and just the knowledge itself, even if you're not going to be a computer person, although how could you not be a computer person in this day and age? Everything deals with computers. I just think it's a fabulous course. So that's my exuberance. Typical challenges. My typical challenges are with kids that are afraid to try because they don't want to break it. And what I have to go through, especially with the girls in the beginning, saying, okay, try it. What's the worst thing that happens? I'm not sure. Well, the worst thing that's going to happen is that it's not going to work. Okay, so what? It's not working right now. So let's try something. And then sort of getting them to bridge. And I think that's where I logged in when Audrey was talking, bridge that sort of, to me, it's in the beginning, they're doing a lot of guessing and checking, and then getting them to do a little bit of planning and thinking out why things are working. In my class, I do a lot of code analysis with them, where I just give them blocks of code and say, what does this do? What's the outcome going to be? If we built this block, what would happen? And I think that's that's a typical challenge, is that the kids get locked into that guess and check. Well, this didn't work, so I'm going to try this. Well, this didn't work, so I'm going to try that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially when they're beginning, if they're learning from it instead of just guessing and checking. And so that's a challenge that I have. Another challenge that I have, and I have come across in teaching other teachers with this curriculum, is that we have fabulous solutions to the labs, but some of them are rather complex, and they could be done in a more simple way. And when I'm teaching one of the teacher sessions, and I've got English teachers and yearbook teachers, and they go in and look at how somebody wrote the solutions, and it's really complex, that gets a little bit demoralizing, I think, for those teachers. It's not that they can't do it, it's just that it's one more thing for them to have to accomplish, I guess. And they're already nervous because computers are not necessarily their gig. And so I wish that some of the solutions were a little less complex, and most of them are great, but there's a few in there that you look at and go, oh my goodness, wow, okay, that's awesome. Let me see if I can explain that for you, you know. And then let's see, what aspects of SNAP get in the way of learning to program? Yes, Brian, I think too much code and maybe too advanced. Like it could be more simple than more complex. And I say that because in the earlier units, it's more simple code writing. But some of the solutions are a lot more complex, and that's not necessarily bad. I just think, yes, I agree with Audrey too, that the vocabulary is presented in a better way now. I really like the revision, except that, oh my gosh, I wish it didn't happen last year in the middle of COVID and everything else that we were dealing with. But I think that the revision is awesome. I like the way things flow a little bit better. And I think part of that is because I've done this for several years now. I'm not sure what gets in the way of learning to program, except that I would agree that I do have to push some of my students that think that they come in knowing everything about coding because they've self-taught themselves and they don't really know everything about coding. And then they say, oh, well, this is a baby language. And I have to show them that it's not, because it's not. And I will definitely use the article that Audrey mentioned earlier. So I think that's my 25 cents worth.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Susan Ettenheim. I teach at Eleanor Roosevelt High School in New York City. It's a small school relative to some of the large schools of New York City. It's got about 550 students. And what I love most about teaching introductory programming with SNAP is that I have the opportunity to kind of put out the fires before they've ever started. So in other words, I'm a living example of somebody who had the opportunity to get deeply involved in this in the 70s and tasted it and said, no, thank you. And then I went about my life, and then I had the opportunity to get deeply involved in computer science and education and all these things again about 15 years ago. And I took a taste of it and said, no, thank you. And then I didn't come back to it until I discovered Scratch and let go of Flash and discovered BJC. And Dan, what year was it that you came to New York to train us? That was when I started teaching BJC.
About 3 or 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm maybe 1 year newer than Audrey and Kim, but basically the same vintage. And So I don't have any conversations about baby language or not. It just doesn't exist in my room because I have 4 3D printers, I have 2 sewing machines, and I explained to them that the reason we code here is because there's so much to do with programming, and there's so many different ways that people in life use programming. And my 2 daughters, who are making a lot more money than I will ever make in my whole life, who work for Adobe, and the other one is a data visualization specialist now, they know a lot of programming and they all use web interfaces. I mean, yes, they've learned some programming, but it's really not critical in their job. They understand the concepts and that's why they can do their job well. So that's what we talk about. And we talk about how Snap really lends itself well to being able to translate into physical objects on the 3D printer through beetle blocks or in the objects that we have in the room, the stitching. And these become wonderful ways to creatively express yourself. If you want to do robotics and if you want to learn Objective-C, if you want to stay at school till 6 o'clock and cry, the physics door is down the hall from my room. I love the teacher who teaches that. That's not what I'm about. I'm about teaching coding for fun, for expression, for challenge, for sharing. And that's what people see when they walk in my room. And so we don't really have any discussion because they're involved right away in the possibilities of Snap. And also I do agree that coming away with Alonzo the first day, that's a very positive experience. So I'm no longer putting out the fires that twice caused me to walk away from computer science over my lifetime. I'm just engaging them right away. Also, on occasion, and not the last 2 years, but on occasion, I have a student video in with my class from their college dorm room as kind of evidence of like, yeah, I got college credit for that class that you're taking. I graduated. I was sitting in this seat that you're sitting in now. And yeah, I had to take a Python class and create a tip calculator, and it was no problem at all because I had basically done it in Snap. Yeah, like a loop and if then I totally got it. So they go away with such strong sense of the concepts that I have these sort of testimonials come back that I was sitting here and you may think you're in for a lot of fun and I had fun too. But guess what? It actually works in so many ways. So the challenges that my students encounter, and I was talking to Richard Millwood this morning about it, and we had very interesting conversations. And Audrey and I have had conversations too, and Kim about, and a lot of the teachers about how sometimes our students who are learning Snap aren't as good as code tracing. And we understand that you don't have to do flowcharts, and that makes a lot of sense. And I agree with that. But what Richard and I were talking about is there's a certain kind of literacy that's still involved in computer science. And certainly the AP exam talks about that more, like being able to talk about your code and explain it. And I am definitely going to work, as Richard said, we all believe in remixing code, but can we talk about it? Because as time has gone on, as I become a more experienced teacher with this, I understand more that those colors of the blocks are not arbitrary and those shapes of the blocks are not arbitrary. And I don't think we do a good enough job of using the proper computer science vocabulary and using it in terms of the shapes of the blocks. And I think that if we are a little more transparent about some of the powerful things that already exist in Snap, that's going to help them overcome the challenges. And for me, that biggest challenge again does happen when it goes from Alonzo to more complex principles, although I do think bringing the shopping list back helped a lot. Now, I saw in the chat this idea of the design recipe, and I think that's very funny because I haven't been around much this week because I triple booked myself, unfortunately, because back in January, I agreed to teach this week a group of teachers in this country we're initiating a data science initiative in New York City. We're really proud of that. We're only the second city in the country to teach data science on a high school level. And we're starting our second cohort this summer. And we're doing it with Bootstrap Data Science, which strongly uses the design recipe. And the last 2 years, everything has been up in the air because of the pandemic. But the year before that, what I started doing, and Dan will certainly testify, this is one of my biggest weak points learning to program in Snap and learn to program in computer science, was that I didn't really understand domain and range. I had been a math minor in college, but guess what? Over time, a lot of other things had happened in my life and none of them required me to deal with domain and range. So when I got here and I got to the contact list, I was stuck. It was hard. And after learning the design recipe in data science, I was like, oh my gosh, I really understand this. So what I've been doing is I've been taking a couple of weeks off because I love the BJC curriculum, but I think data science, especially in this day and age, is a lot more than the most popular baby name. Not saying that it's limited to that, but I just think that may not be the strongest piece. And in the bootstrap data science, I found a real area of social justice that I could bring to my school that really needs this. So I take a little tiny break. I get to the point right before the contact list where they're really excited. They've made polygons, they've used Snap, they're making their own blogs. We really understand abstraction and algorithms, which I describe as I'm having a dinner party. And do I really want to tell you how many pounds of flour? No, I just want to tell you how many dozens of cookies to bring for the party. And that's how they understand the difference between algorithms and abstraction. I don't really want to know what's in the cookies. I just want the cookies for the dinner party. And but if I stop right before the contact list, they're excited, they're positive, they're confident. And then if I do a couple of weeks of the design recipe and a little bit of data science, throw in some heavy duty social justice, they feel empowered. They now know how to text code, just like I did after my first 2 lessons of ballroom. I thought I would be fine after that. Didn't work out that way, but they have that confidence that they understand text-based programming and they really understand domain and range. From the design recipe, we go back to the contact list and it's amazing how things go more smoothly. So as far as aspects of Snap that get in the way, I really don't think they are. The only thing is I just think we need to get to be more transparent about the powerful things that are built into Snap that maybe 10 years ago, we did have to be afraid of saying those words that were like very computer science words. But now I think in this day and age, especially with how many kids do take after school programs or summer programs, I think it will help them feel more confident in using Snap if we use that proper vocabulary.
Great. Thank you all so much. I also, I really appreciate all the feedback. I appreciate the references to the BJC programming languages in your experience there. And I also want to focus us in on this first few weeks of Snap and what kinds of things we're seeing, what happens in September with Snap in particular, not so much with BJC, but really looking at kids getting the hang of Snap, creating their accounts, learning to drag and drop blocks, learning to use the Snap interface. Are there things there that get in the way or that we could improve that we could talk about now with this group? Anything come to mind?
Sure,
And
they all say, just make it work like Google Docs so we can share.
Okay, so what do you mean by that, Susan?
We're constantly like sharing URLs. I have spreadsheets where people post things. We send them back and forth. When do you share? When do you publish? I mean, yeah, the world expects everything to work like Google Docs, and it doesn't all work that way, and they don't understand why not. So yeah, that's life.
Yeah, saving. It doesn't automatically save. Oh my gosh. How many times a day do I have to say in my class, save often, save early, save often, save early, keep saving, save now. Why don't you save now? Because they're so used to Google, it just automatically saves for them that, you know, I get tears in that first couple of weeks of, I did this, Miss O, I did this, but I
find myself saying all the time, save as often as you are willing to redo. So when I walk up to a kid and say, when did you save last? They're like, about 15 minutes ago. I'm like, wow, you are braver than me. I'm not willing to redo 15 minutes worth of work.
Yeah, great. Other thoughts?
It doesn't happen in the beginning, but eventually kids always say, oh my gosh, I have to scroll through so many things to get to what I want to open. Why can't there be folders? And
yes, folders.
Right?
Okay. So
folders, I still struggle with
folders.
one of the first things I teach is naming protocols for your files, because it's so easy to not do good version control on Snap projects.
I would agree. And that's something else. I try to get into my kids' heads, and they fight me a lot on this, and that is, okay, so save that one as version 1. Now open it up and save today's right away as version 2, just because, you know, I go, you're going to make changes to it. This is a pretty in-depth program that you're writing, and don't come to me later and say, well, it was working better yesterday. Now I'm not so sure. Like, well, start saving them as version 1, version 2, and then at least you can go back and look at and compare, why was yesterday's working better? Or I'm going to scrap what I did today and just go back and start again with yesterday's version, whatever. That's a tough one.
Do you think we could say that you can't make a new block unless you add a comment?
That is something I'm going to work on this year. That is definitely something that I'm going to work on.
Right.
And that I don't want the comment to be describing line by line what the block does, because that's another issue that I have with kids is tell me what this piece of code is going to do. Well, first it's going to go in and it's going to set, and then it's going to do this. And then I'm like, no, that's not what I want to know. I want to know what, this is naming all the squares in tic-tac-toe. Okay, great. That's all I need to know.
If we're talking about the SNAP language more than BJC, I think some of the updates in the last year that have happened are incredibly exciting and might not have driven me to go to Bootstrap Data Science had these things existed a few years ago. And yet I certainly don't regret, because I think that has added a lot to my toolbox. But I wish maybe if we could have a place in Snap where we could bridge that for those people who are ready to see those more advanced features, or there's new features like maybe mini tutorials or something. Just would be nice if the community could build a whole page of like mini video tutorials that just highlighted certain small complex things, or it would be nice if there were a frequently misunderstood section. Wouldn't that be great?
When you say mini tutorials, I'm curious, it sounds like maybe you need a video. About how long would you find appropriate for something like that with your kids? Are we thinking 3 to 5 minutes, or
no more than 3 minutes? 3 minutes max. What was it Dan used to say, like never go more than 5 minutes? I remember you told us way back when, but I'd say 3 even.
Yeah, Learning at Scale 2014 talked about 6 minutes was the absolute hard max I can pass the paper on in terms of videos. But shorter than that is better. TikTok, the shorter the better.
Yeah, look at the powerful impression a TikTok video can make in 60 seconds. But I've gone through a lot of Yagda's and the SAP classes, and they're awesome. But even for me to take an hour and break it down, it just requires a lot of time that unfortunately students and teachers, I think, evenly don't have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there are such powerful, exciting things that could be being used. This summer I was so thrilled to work with South Carolina State. Oh boy, now that's terrible. But on the
North
Carolina. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, and we were doing AI and machine learning with block-based programming language, and it was really exciting. And I'm thinking, hey, those guys have that. Why don't we have that? Why isn't my AP class looking at the Twitter feed? Or the New York, the Twitter feed I could take or leave, but the New York Times feed would be nice to look at things. It just wasn't that hard to do. And the blocks are there now. They weren't there 5 years ago, but there's such exciting stuff now. So we need like little teeny tiny chunks of tutorials saying, here's like a 3 minute, here's something really cool you could do. Did you know this existed? Here's how to do it, kind of thing.
I think it would be neat if you're thinking of adding things in the future, the BJC people, to do next blocks, to bring that in, because there's so many things I personally want to do now that I've seen next blocks. And I don't know if I'll do it after the AP exam or before, like introduce them to the shared coding, because that will just work out so well for their project. So I don't know, that would be something that's nice, not crucial, but nice integration there.
I think we have a wealth of people here, some names I recognize or not, and I would love to hear from them.
Yeah, so let's open it up and hear from everybody. And again, I want to focus us really on Snap. I know BJC is super exciting, and it's what I do with most of my time. And you're all BJC teachers, and this is wonderful. But I'd really like to talk about SNAP, and in particular, I've framed these 3 questions here. We can look at them and we can branch out. What would increase SNAP usability for new student users in the first few weeks of school? What would make SNAP easier for new teacher users to learn to use and to teach with? And what would help keep SNAP relevant in the growing landscape of introductory programming interfaces? So we're seeing all these different things coming out. It's an exciting time to be teaching computer science. How do we keep SNAP up to date with what other folks are coming out with? And then I've actually created an idea boards for all of us to contribute to. So now's a chance for participants to join in and have conversations with our panel, have conversations. We've got some curriculum developers here. We've got some SNAP developers here. But we really want to hear from teachers. What is it that our new users are finding as hurdles in SNAP in particular? What about SNAP can be made more facile so that it's easier to work with and focus on the programming? And so I just took note of a couple of things I heard. I heard folks mentioning autosave, mentioning wanting folders in that saving scheme, some element of version control, some way to save and share documents like Google Docs. And then I heard these mini tutorials. So if you'd like to type in bjc.link down here at the bottom /new users 2021, that will bring you to this idea boards. And you can start dropping in answers to these questions. We can also be having a conversation while we're doing it. What's nice about this feature is it kind of records what we're talking about, and it also allows you to +1 on things if there's something in particular that you agree with or that's really relevant to your classroom. Are folks able to get to that link? No, I'm getting a no on that. So then here's a question from maybe someone who's more familiar with idea boards than me. Do I need to do something that I haven't done here? Like open it up or something? Is there a sharing feature? Does anyone know?
Mary, I'm in. It just worked.
You're in, okay.
Can you put that link there again?
Sure.
Oh, there it is. Bernat just shared it. Never
Thank
mind.
you, Bernat. Great, so I don't see any comments dropping in up there. But these are the same questions as on the slides. So let's hear from our participants. What would increase usability for new student users? What would help new teachers to learn and teach? And what would help keep SNAP relevant? And I encourage you to join into the conversation, but I see there's a lot going on in the chat, so I'm going to catch up there a little bit. And then if anyone's not able to get to this idea boards, please let us know. Looks like we're seeing some things already. Excellent. So I'm seeing some comments about versioning and autosave in the chat. Changing the name of a program. Anyone who's not been part of the panel, who's a participant here, want to share out loud some of what they've been experiencing with new students or as a teacher working with SNAP? Improvements that we might ask for one day in SNAP that would be particularly helpful to the classroom.
Yeah, something which has bothering me recently is documentation. So you can export the blocks, but if you do it in stages, they don't have the same width. And then if you import it somewhere, you have to adjust the sizes of these blocks. So it would be nice to have something like a replay of what you as a teacher show and program, or just a way you can export them like step by step. Like if you have 4 blocks, you can first show the first and the second 2, the third 2, and so something like that would be very useful to write basic documentation, because it takes a lot of time. You copy, you paste, and you write something, then the next picture and so on. That can be tedious.
So are you thinking of some way to make a recording of you working through a SNAP project?
Yes, something like that, but not like a video, but just showing the steps, more like snapshots. Mm-hmm. Because with the video, Well, I've tried it, but normally if you have a middle-sized program, it takes too long. You go into 10 minutes or more when you're explaining what you're doing. Not everybody likes videos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about other folks? Is that something that other folks have wondered about or that would be useful to them? To any of you? Thank you. Let's look at a few of these responses here. So in ways to increase usability for new users. I didn't know what BJC was and was having a hard time finding beginning project tutorials. Is this about BJC? I'm actually not entirely sure what we're asking here. Feel free to add something in the chat and I'm happy to try to answer that question for you. BJC is an AP computer science principles curriculum that uses Snap. All of our panelists are BJC high school teachers. You can access BJC at bjc.edc.org, and I'll drop that link in the chat just in case anyone's curious. But again, the sessions here is about Snap. We just happen to have some experienced BJC programmers because that's who I know.
On that a little bit. You know, Snap was introduced to me and I looked at it and was like, oh, you know, it seems like Scratch, but with some more advanced features. And well, what do I do? And, you know, with Scratch, there's built-in tutorials, a plethora of tutorials online. And I definitely spent a lot of time, you know, Berkeley Snap tutorials, lesson plans, projects, and I just was sort of coming up with blanks. And so I had no idea how to get started with it. There was no like quick and easy project guide. And so, you know, having the BJC reference, and I was able to look up that curriculum, I was like, oh, this is exactly kind of the stuff I was looking for. It was just not easily to find in a Google search.
Great, that's wonderful feedback, thank you. So someone said something similar to the backpack feature in Scratch would be nice. I'm actually not familiar with that. I'm entirely a Snap programmer. I don't know the backpack feature. I've even got a +1 here. Would someone like to speak to what that is?
Yeah, for instance, if I do a project, Mary, and I make a block, I can make my project publicly available. Then you can look at my project and you can take that code and drop it in your backpack so that you can then use that code in a project of yours. Or you can transfer a segment of code from one of your projects to another of your projects without recreating it.
So this, would you say that's similar to the importing, exporting feature of Snap and maybe duplicating code within a project? Or are you finding it simpler to do in Scratch? Or is there something additional in Scratch that they offer?
It's being able to put in your cloud account, not just projects, but a sprite or a block or, you know, a costume. So it's being able to upload little chunks of things.
Great.
But that said, in Snap, you can export chunks of programs. You can export a script and re-import it in a different program. I do that in a different project. I do that all the time to reuse parts of other projects. And you can export a sprite and re-import it in another project. So there are several ways.
You can do it on your own computer, your local file system.
Yeah, of course.
You can't do that in Scratch though, right? You can't, it's not online. It's also just in the session.
Oh, is that true? The backpack isn't?
Yeah. It's really, I mean, when we're in the browser, we actually have a backpack. It is the browser. So if you download something, you'll find a tab at the bottom of your browser, and you could just drag it into any other Snap project.
I think you guys are saying this though from the lens of you've been programming this for a long time.
No,
I think
no. Wait, this is something about, see, this is something where we're using the web, and it's actually a web feature already. So we don't have to, you know, simulate.
So I do want to get onto a raised hand that we have, but I also want to say that maybe the issue, I mean, maybe we need to spend a little time thinking about how to make this, the feature that is existing more transparent, more visible, more accessible, because we have a lot of folks here who are saying they didn't know it was there, they didn't know how to use it. And they've got Jens saying, oh, it's there. So we've got a disconnect there that we need to resolve somehow. And maybe there's additions to that feature that might be helpful, but maybe it's just about making sure that everyone knows where the feature is and how to use it. I want to move to Randy, who's had a hand up for a little while. Randy, what do you want to share with us?
Actually, I posted the backpack.
Oh, great.
And I was just looking at what the developers are posting in the chat. I would just say that you know, I have a lot of students who are working on Chromebooks, and the process of like clicking and downloading something and then importing it in, it's onerous for new learners. Definitely once you're familiar, you know, it's a no-brainer. But like in Scratch, I mean, there's that backpack at the bottom of your coding window. You just drop stuff in there and it stays in there, and then you can just pull it back out. I haven't tried this thing that Jen's just posted about, so maybe it's easier now. But it's just so much easier for students if they have a place in their window they can drop code and then open a new project and bring it in. So go ahead, Jens.
It's Chrome. It's Chrome. So you just right click on something you want to share and you say export. And then in Chrome, at the bottom of Chrome, you actually have your backpack, and you open another project and you just literally drag it in as many projects as you want.
So when that you're talking about when you download something, it shows as a tab, and you can just drag that back in.
Yep. It's amazing how drag and drop is so little known. Whereas it's actually
I didn't know about it.
How Windows systems work. It's like you just drag and drop.
So this would be something definitely to show students in the beginning. But I think the point was also made just that like it's visible as a backpack. So again, we're talking about new learners here. And maybe this is something that they can pick up.
Yeah, I want to make that comment because I wrote that comment. And the thing with the backpack, the same thing is in AI Inventor. When you open a backpack, it's not just a list of files. You see the blocks as they were composed. It's nothing like cut and paste where you can do a keystroke in Windows and get your clipboard opened up, but you don't see the blocks in it the way it was programmed. So the visualness of the backpack is the main thing. And the backpack is also not just a session tool. You can have a backpack sitting there, 1 year of code in it that you put in there months ago and you've forgotten about it. But when you open it, boom, it's right there visually in front of your eyes. So that to me is really critical with the backpack implementations, and it's very helpful from that perspective.
Great. So this is wonderful. We have a +1 on the backpack feature. If other folks want to join in and help us prioritize what are the needs of our new users and new teachers, please do. If you're having trouble getting to the idea boards, let us know. I'm going to keep skimming through some of these ideas so we can have a little more discussion about what folks think would be helpful to new users. Short tutorials about new features. We've talked a little bit about that. I'm excited to see it up here. Please feel free to +1. Quick and easy access to lesson plans, single and multiple day activities. So we have BJC. We've talked a little bit about creating some tutorials. I'm happy to hear more about this if there's other ideas about it. Being able to change the name of an old program. User trading tutorials or documents. Again, we're getting to this tutorials idea. So I'm seeing 2. Does anyone know is there a way to combine or like stick a sticky note on top of the other one in idea boards to some of our teachers who are using it all the time? All right, well, we'll just make note that that's a very similar idea. Organize the millions of projects available now in a usable thematic way on the community. So that sounds like that's more about the Snap community interface, maybe the Snap forum. Does someone want to speak to that?
Yeah, I put that, and it's just that we have a mishmash now of people who have create tasks, who have saved them as projects and put them there, and lots of beginning users. And so, for instance, if one of my students wants to build a pendulum and they search on the word pendulum in the Snap community, and this is true in Scratch too, they really don't know if they're going to get anything that's usable or good or bad, or there's no vehicle for that. There's no vehicle in the community. There's a wonderful wealth of project being built, but there's no vehicle to help people find mentor projects in a way. And I'm not sure how to do that. It might not be possible, but it's just a thought that I think, I don't know how we would start to filter out some of those things just to help people find things better, because there are so many rich things there.
Well, as the guy who is actually categorizing projects every week, we are trying. It's just hard. I swear I look at every single project that's being published in the Snap site. It's still small enough that I can do that. It takes hours, but I still can do it. If we were Scratch, a single person couldn't do that. And I actually categorize the projects that are well made and that I think are interesting to the community into different collections that you can find in the Snap page. You have, as Brian was pointing out, we have physics collection, art collection, games collection, science collection, a simulations collection. And then we have the featured projects that are projects that may or may not fit into these other collections, but that we find exceptionally well made or interesting. So there is the system in place. It just it is a big community, but there are not so many published projects yet.
So maybe
we should start an educators forum on Snap where you could just say, here's the list of curated. Because I don't I didn't know. I don't know how to. Should I know how to find the curated collections? Because that would be really helpful.
Well, in the front page, you have the featured projects, and then you have 3 random collections showing up every time. So it might be art, science, and music, maybe, but the next time it may be games and simulations and something else. But if you click on example projects, and let me share the link.
So all of those are curated collections. That's good to know.
Yes,
that's another good topic for a mini tutorial.
Yeah.
Great. And I just want to, I want to keep us moving along through all these great suggestions so we really have a chance to hear them all. I keep wanting to say, oh, let's have a tutorial on that right now. But I don't think we have the time for that. We have, I think, about 8 minutes left of this session, 7 minutes left. And I want to get through the last few comments here and just make sure that we're really getting a chance to hear all of the things that teachers are saying. And it sounds like some of these features do exist, and some of it might be about communicating or just making it more prominent for folks. And maybe it's something about adding 1 or 2 extra little nuances of features that'll make things more accessible and usable for folks. So snippets of sample code in an open window off of a block that can be dropped into Snap and run. That sounds a lot like that backpack idea to me. Am I characterizing the sort of thing that we're talking about there correctly?
I wrote that again. If I can expand on it, that's a concept of a help screen where help is more than just a visual display or code images, but the code is actually live in block format that can be dragged and dropped onto the thing. MakeCode is a very good example of this. They have a fantastic help system. Not only can you open it up in another browser window and run it inside the browser as a separate session, things can be dragged and dropped into the editing environment in a live fashion. So it's like a backpack if that's what you want to think of it, but really you're on a block and you right click and you say help, I want to see what this block does. It explains it to you, gives you a few blocks, and when you drag that drop and drop it on Snap, you execute it. It's a live help almost, I should say.
Okay, so it's kind of like an additional help feature in objects in the backpack.
I guess, yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep moving along, so I want to hear everything. Help for blocks with a link to a number of examples to how to use that block. This is sounding like we're getting to a trend here. FAQ for these tips and tricks on the Snap site, another great idea. I'm going to move on to teachers. What would help new teachers to learn and to teach? BJC Part 2 is still on edX, but not Part 1. Any plans to put that back up? Or parts 3 and 4. If we have someone on the team here who can answer that question, could you answer that in the chat? Good structured tutorials. Wow, we've got a lot of demand for this. Tips and tricks, short videos using Snap. Tutorials on how you can do your own blocks. For me, I learned faster watching a video tutorial. Auto documentation for a number of blocks. So that actually is starting to sound a little bit like help for blocks. Am I understanding these questions? Does anyone want to speak actually to either this help for blocks with a link or the auto documentation for a number of blocks?
So there are basically two things. The help is when you click on a block for help now, most of the time it doesn't really help. There are a lot of blocks you don't understand what the help does, and it would be good to have more than one example, but probably not in that window, but you click on a link and then you get to a page. I think Microblocks has done that brilliantly, how to explain the different use of blocks. And the other one, auto documentation, is more like when I write, I try to tell the students how to use a block and I write documentation. As I said, it's tedious at the moment, unless you export the whole block, but that's not normally what you want, because then the students don't know where to focus.
And so how would, in an ideal world, what would you have there?
Yesterday, City Labs showed some PDFs where you have some step-by-step. It's like putting Lego bricks together. You have the first block, then you put the second on it. If you had something like that, you don't have to do by hand. That would be really cool. Or as I said, something like replay.
Okay.
But not showing you how you drag the blocks, but just one block after another put together.
So this is kind of like the video tutorials, but you're also hoping to have them be accessible through the help menu item. Is that?
Yeah, just for export, so that you can put it in your own documentation.
Yeah, I think
because
I see.
you know that there's documentation for a block which is given, but then maybe you want to document part or all of your programming for the kids to understand what you actually have done.
Animated help sounds like a great thing for us to think about. I just want to throw out that you can, make help for your own custom blocks, right? And just to make sure everybody knows this, in the block editor, if you make a comment and attach it to the hat block in the block editor, it will be the help for your custom block.
Thanks, Brian. Excellent. I love how you said that so succinctly as well, because I have about a minute and a half, and I want to just cover these last few comments and then give some thank yous to so many of you. A tutorial for Micro World and how can I adapt it for my students in Germany? This seems like it's right in line with additional tutorial support, and also we're hearing this idea of language translation in this comment as well. A list of the features of Snap compared to Scratch. Why should teachers use Snap instead of Scratch? I love this. I think that's a great idea. Using open databases, API. So this is keeping Snap relevant. Using open databases, highlight projects using the positive updates. I'm not quite sure what that one's asking. If you want to jump in, I'm going to read the next one and then you could pop on and help me understand that one a bit. For students that are transitioning to text-based coding, it'd be nice to have more comparison examples. We're actually working on that in BJC right now. We can think a little bit about how that might play out in Snap in some way potentially. We have about 30 seconds left. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone in this session. Thank you to our panelists for setting the stage for us to talk about these things. Thank you to all the participants who joined in and helped us better understand what could be improved in Snap. Thank you to the Snap developers. It's always hard to hear feedback, and we really appreciate you listening and joining in and giving us some quick tutorials on things that already exist. And I'm just thrilled with everyone joining in and helping us figure out how to make Snap even better than it already is. We all love it so much. If you want to keep adding ideas to this idea boards or keep liking things, a +1 feature is great to help us understand really where the priorities are. And I hope you all have a great rest of SnapCon. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mary.